after the time when you stop breathing, which is when conventionally people would say, oh, now they're dead. In the films they put a mirror underneath the person's nose to see if there's any breath. Okay, stop breathing, they're dead. So according to the Buddhist scriptures, it's very clear that you haven't finished dying at that point. When we talk about the clear light mind, it's referring to the most subtle level of mind or most subtle level of consciousness as possible. So when we die, then all the gross levels of consciousness, like the senses, gradually pack up the sense bases or the sense organs stop functioning, and so then the sense consciousnesses, they stop functioning. The kind of like gross conceptual minds cease to function, and well, to cut a long story short, you stop breathing, your mind becomes more and more subtle, and when it gets to the most subtle, that's the clear light mind, but you're still alive. And even for ordinary people, that can last for several days if they're left and undisturbed. Even for ordinary people, and for more exceptional people, it can last for 15 days. And how you would know that the person still hasn't died and is still in that experience is because I think it might be more obvious in places like in India, where you got the hot weather, where the body would normally start rotting very quickly once death has actually occurred. So during that time when they're still in the clear light, they know the person is still in that clear light experience, still alive actually, because the body hasn't started to smell. And then when the body starts to smell, there are other descriptions of the different signs of whether the person has actually passed away, but according to some Tibetan doctors, the sure sign that the person has actually passed away, that the life has ended, that clear light, very subtle mind has finished, and now the mind is going to start becoming grosser and grosser and grosser again, is when the body starts to smell. Then you know that the person has passed away, and you can start moving your body and so on like that. And so basically your life starts off with a clear light mind and finishes with the clear light. So how rebirth works? There are different ways of approaching it, actually, and you might say different lines of reasoning that could sort of make you tend towards thinking, in the beginning maybe there are past lives, maybe there are future lives, and becoming more and more sort of that it must be like that. Because of course, being able to remember is something very rare, but of course that would be one very good reason. You can actually remember your past life. I had a friend who tragically died in Delhi through a shore crash many years ago. So she could remember some past lives or another. So of course that would be great, because if you remember, of course you might doubt your memories, but anyway, I think if you remember it, then that would make a big difference for you. Some teachers I listen to, they say, well, there are all these people that remember their past lives, so even if you don't remember yourself, the fact that there are all these, and have people, there are all these accounts, how can there not be if they can remember it? And some people find that more convincing than others. And I do think, it could be that there is some reason that will work for some people. Will find very persuasive, others don't find so persuasive. They maybe find some other reason here persuasive. So that for sure, just remember, that would be very convincing. If you met somebody who says, oh no, definitely, I remember past lives, I'd remember this, and it's somebody that you trust, it would make a difference, wouldn't it? You would really, for sure, you would be thinking, maybe there really is something in this. People say sometimes that we're obviously just joking, but that when Buddhists died and they're reborn, and when Christians die they go to heaven, and when the atheists died and they just sort of vanish into nothing. So it's a question of, looking at the for and the against and so on, and making your own decisions. I think for me, maybe all of them make some sense. The one that makes the least sense is when people start talking about, how two children, they're treated the same parents, born around the same time. One turns out really bad, one turns out really good. So therefore, the only way to explain that is karma. I don't find that so convincing, because small differences in the way that they were brought up could lead to huge differences in the way they turn out. And of course, two children from the same parents don't have exactly the same genes, do they? So I don't find that so convincing, but some people find it very convincing. So I mentioned, remembering past lives. There's proof of past lives by people remembering, whether it's you remembering or somebody else remembering, and you find that convincing. Then the karma one. Then one which I find maybe more convincing is that every moment of mind has to have a previous moment, and is always has a subsequent moment. Well, there's this meditation to do, which you often get when you're during an introductory course, where you're encouraged to think about the continuity of your experience from now to the previous minute, the previous hour, the previous day, week, months on, then going back to the earliest memory you might have. And so I've got my earliest memories, and some people remember even back to the womb, which I think is quite unusual. So you get that sense of continuity of how, there always has to be, and not just that there always was a previous moment, whatever stage of your life you go back to, there always was, and there had to be. So then when you go back to the earliest memory, and you know that you can't remember further back than that, but you know that you were alive still then, and people even tell you what kind of a child you were, And for example, in my own case, I can remember my earliest memories with my mother, and although I can't remember anything before that, I know that my mother was somebody that was familiar to me. So where did that familiarity come from? So I know that there is sort of like some continuity going back before my earliest memories. And whenever you consider this life to have begun, sometime during the womb, your time in the womb, anyway, there's a first moment, and then it comes to, okay, so every other moment had to have a previous moment. So why would that not have a previous moment? And so then that sort of, once you've decided, okay, yeah, there was a previous moment, that's, you actually accepted past lives. If you feel that, the mind is something that can't possibly be destroyed because there's nothing that can destroy it, then that also brings you to the idea that, so there's going to be a subsequent moment after this life, which brings you to future lives. I find that pretty convincing, and that also, I think, comes very much coupled with the, from your own experience, from your own meditations and so on, the sense of there being this thing called the mind, which is not a physical thing, which has its own kind of life. So that's what you're talking about when you speak of future moments and previous moments and so on. That's what I find most convenient. I can't remember other reasons that I've heard. I think one of them is actually, the clear light experience, and that would be something that, if you believe it, that's one thing, but otherwise, if through your meditation you've been able to slow your mind down and make your mind subtle to the point where you have that kind of like clear-eyed mind, then that would be also like indicative of like persuasive of the beginningless and endlessness of the mind.